Coding Dojo is a programming school that turns beginners into developers in only 14 weeks. Over 90% of their grads land jobs within 3 months of graduating, often making over $70K per year. To learn more, visit codingdojo.com or click the link in the description below. Hey, what's going on, guys? In this presentation, I'm going to talk about some of the common questions and concerns and struggles that people may have when they get into programming and web development. And before we start, I just want to say that I do not have all the answers. Nobody on the planet does. And many of these answers are completely different from person to person. A great idea for me may be a horrible idea for you, and vice versa. So take all of this, anything I say, with a grain of salt. The purpose of this video is just to give you a little insight, and also for you to know that some of the stuff that you constantly think about and struggle with is extremely common in this field. And I like doing these videos once in a while because they really seem to help people out, and it's stuff that I would have wanted to hear when I was getting started. So hopefully you enjoy this. All right. So first thing we're going to look at is education and learning. Now, when you decide to be a programmer or a web developer, a designer, anything like that, you have a few different options. Okay, so this is one of the things that really varies from person to person. And again, take everything I say with a grain of salt and do your own research for everything. Never take one person's advice or views into consideration, and that's it. Make sure you do your research and you talk to other people as well. So first thing you could do is you could go to college and you can get a degree, probably a computer science degree. You could do a 2-year degree, 4-year, you could do full-time, part-time. So even if you make this choice, you have a bunch of other choices after that to make. And in my opinion, you don't need college to get a great job, but it definitely helps. Now, when it comes to learning, I think many people, not everybody, but many people can learn just as much or more on their own than with college. And the reason for that is, in college, even though you have really good structure, you have your classes and you have a lot of structure, you have to learn a bunch of crap that you don't need to know for this field. So you do waste a lot of time. I actually did do a little bit of college, and I can tell you that I learned nothing that I use today. Okay, I was going for a 2-year computer science degree, and I had psychology, statistics, writing, a bunch of stuff that helped me in no way whatsoever. And during that time, I could have been studying, Ruby on Rails or PHP or whatever was popular at that time. I did have some Java and basic computer science training, but nothing that was worth thousands of dollars in all that time. So even though that was my experience and that's my view, you may be someone that needs structure to really grasp the knowledge. And some people just suck at self-teaching. And those are the people that I think I think college is a really good thing for. Plus, you also get the social aspect of it, which is worth more than anything else in my opinion. Unless, of course, you're going to like MIT or something like that. But I'm just talking about just a regular college. But that's something self-teaching doesn't give you, is that interaction and that communication with other people, at least in most cases. Now, another option you have is boot camp, which I think boot camps are much better than college. It's a much better deal because you do get that social aspect and you get to skip all the crap you don't need and focus on new and useful technology. Most, small colleges, they're not teaching like Node.js and, some of the newer frameworks. They're not teaching React. Boot camps are. They're also much shorter, and it gives you some really good experience. Now, I've never attended a boot camp, but I think they're great from what I've heard and what I've seen. I've even had some boot camps sponsor my videos. I know people that have graduated and learned a lot and found jobs right away after boot camp. So my personal opinion is that boot camps are a better choice than college. But again, take it with a grain of salt. All right. Now we have self-learning or self-teaching. And like I said, I did do a little bit of college, but I dropped out And everything that I know that you watch on my channel and in my courses, it's all stuff that I learned on my own with just the cost of an internet connection and some online courses. So sites like Udemy are great, Pluralsight, Udacity. You also have like Free Code Camp and what's the other one? Code Academy, YouTube tutorials, written tutorials, and blog posts. Documentation. I can't stress how helpful documentation can be as long as it's well written. It may be a bit boring to read through, but it really teaches you a lot about that specific language or framework or whatever it is you're learning about. So this is how I learned, and if you're watching this video and you're a subscriber, then you're basically learning the same way that I did. All right, so again, take anything that I say with a grain of salt, and it just really think about it, do some research, and figure out which route you want to take in terms of education. All right, so that's the education part of it. Now, what about the learning, the technology part? Okay, the technology itself. What is it that you want to do? What do you want to study? I released a video called Web Development in 2018 that really goes into the different options you have as far as languages and frameworks and all that. So if you really want to see your options and get a little advice, I'd suggest that video. But you want to factor in a few things when you're looking for or when you're looking to learn a language or a framework. You want to look at the jobs so you can see what's popular, what's being used, who's hiring for what. And sites like Indeed, Stack Overflow, I think GitHub, there's a bunch of them you can look up. They all show what's really popular and what's declining, what's getting more popular. And you want to learn something that you can actually find a job with. So that's one important factor. Another is you want to learn something that you enjoy. Now, PHP may have a few more jobs than Python, but if you despise writing PHP and you love writing Python, then go with Python. I mean, you may love like something like Perl or something that is, there's no demand for. So in a case like that, you may want to skip it and move on to something else. And I'm sure that others would give you different advice and say go wherever the money is regardless, but I don't agree with that. I think that doing what you love is more important than an extra 10 grand per year, and if you love what you do, you're more apt to succeed further than with a language or with technology that you don't really enjoy. All right, so another question that I see a lot is how many hours per day should I study or code? And this obviously varies greatly depending on your life situation. If you have kids and a family and a full-time job doing something else, you're not going to have much extra time. If you don't have a family or you're not employed or your current job doesn't give you a lot of hours, then you'll have more time to study. So I would definitely say code every single day, even if it's only for a half hour, and whether it's your own projects or you're following along with one of my tutorials. Just kidding, anyone's tutorial, but hopefully mine. I don't really think there's a max to the hours, okay? I'd say maybe 8, because if you think about it, when you work as a programmer, you work all day, so why not study all day if that's possible for you? So my answer would be basically as long as you can. I mean, anything past maybe 8, 9, 10 hours is overdoing it. You're going to get burnt out, but pretty much as long as you can. All right, another choice you have to make is if you want to do front end, back end, or full stack development. If you're someone that loves building user interfaces and hates back end logic and databases and things like that, then you probably want to stick to the front end. And if you hate design and interface, and you love logic and building APIs and stuff, maybe back end is your thing. But I think most of us strive to be full stack developers. You want to be able to build things from start to finish on your own. And chances are you'll work with a team, but you still want to be able to work on both sides. All right, so unless you absolutely hate one or the other, I would suggest full stack. Of course, you also need to take what you can get in the job world, but just because you have a front end position doesn't mean that you shouldn't strive to do full stack someday, maybe in that same company or maybe somewhere else. All right, so hopefully that gives you a little direction. Now, this next topic is something that I've talked about quite a bit in a few other videos because it's something that I deal with constantly. And yes, I do have a channel with almost 250K subscribers, and I still sometimes feel like maybe I'm not right for this. And I think that feeling for me will never go away, completely go away. Sometimes it's worse than others, especially if I put a video out and I make a stupid mistake or I miss something simple that a viewer points out, which they should. It can be kind of a blow to my confidence, and that's something that I just have to personally work on. Imposter syndrome is something that is huge in this field, and it's basically when you feel like you've gotten to a position by either luck or because you knew one or two things and you kind of feel like you fooled your boss into hiring you, but you don't really fit in, you don't really belong there. That's kind of the gist of imposter syndrome. You feel like a fraud in some ways, and in most cases that's not reality. It's completely in the person's head. Of course, there's always more to learn, but usually they're right where they should be. All right, it's just a kind of a lack of self-confidence. You may ask yourself in your brain, or ask yourself if your brain is built for this. I'm not the mathy type. I've heard that a lot. Well, I can tell you that I absolutely suck at math. I've said this before. You only really need really good math skills if you're doing really low-level, deep programming and complex algorithms. You don't need math to be a web developer. That's just a fact. Building REST APIs and user interfaces requires no math or maybe very little in some cases. Now, I've shared this before, but I was kind of a punk teenager. I smoked a lot of weed every single day, drank a lot of alcohol. I got into harder drugs, and I did a lot of damage to myself, including my brain. But once I straightened my life out and I had kids and stuff, I fell in love with programming, and that passion drove me to be able to learn things that I never thought I could learn. So passion is a huge part of success in this field. So you should love to learn this stuff. If you don't, you can still have a career, but it's the most passionate people that really move forward. Unless you're one of those people, the very few people, that this stuff just comes really easy to, and they only have to put in minimal effort. There are people like that. I certainly I'm not one of them. I bust my ass to learn everything that I know and everything I've taught on this channel. But there are some people that it just comes easy to, and they don't really have the passion. It's just easy for them. All right. Another feeling you guys may get in school or in boot camp is that everyone around you just seems to get it. So they're halfway done with their coding project and you're sitting there struggling to even begin. And I had this exact experience in school in my Java class. Now, I could have quit back then when I had that feeling, and I think about that now. I could have just thought, my brain is too screwed up. I messed up. I smoked a lot of pot when I was younger. I don't have the ability to think like these people do. And imagine if I did that. I'd still be working in a machine shop or putting up insulation, making crap money and breaking my back doing it. And now I'm making more than I ever thought I would make. And I'm also teaching this stuff. So this isn't because I'm a genius, but because I love it and I have the passion for it. I look forward every day to learning new things, making videos, teaching. And yes, it's hard, but I like hard. I like difficulty because it challenges me and it keeps me from being bored. All right, so once you finally do figure it out, it's almost like a high. So about 11 years ago, I literally replaced opiates with code. And I share that stuff with you guys because I'm not ashamed of where I came from. I'm actually really proud of it. And I doubt many of my viewers were drug addicts at one point in their life, but I'm sure you guys have struggled with something, some kind of addiction or depression or something like that. And if you haven't yet overcome it, you can and you will. And you can use coding as a tool to do that. All right, so here's an answer to why a lot of us have imposter syndrome. So this is a list more for web developers than other types of programmers. But this is the shit that we need to learn. We don't need to master everything here. Nobody has, but we're constantly expected to know at least some aspects of all of this stuff at one point or another. If someone asks you, about just one part of any of these things and you don't know it, that feeling kicks in of, should I know this? Do I even belong here? When in reality, we all feel like that because none of us know all of this stuff, or at least every part of everything here. And this is all stuff that I just thought of in about 5 minutes. There's probably 3 more pages like this that I could come up with. So in many cases, you're expected to know, and I'm just going to go through this list real quick. So programming languages, whether it's, JavaScript, PHP, Ruby on Rails, Java, C#, C, whatever it may be, markup and styling, so HTML, CSS, frameworks, whether it's JavaScript frameworks, front-end frameworks like Bootstrap, whether it's, PHP frameworks, Ruby frameworks, text editors and IDEs, so Visual Studio Code, Atom, Eclipse, some of the more hardcore IDEs, NetBeans, things like that, version control, Git, Subversion, databases, whether it's relational like MySQL or NoSQL like MongoDB, Redis, cache systems, query languages like SQL, compilers, APIs, HTTP, REST APIs, GraphQL, programming paradigms like object-oriented programming, functional programming, state managers like Redux, Vuex, Flux, NGRX, bundlers and packaging like Webpack and Parcel and Browserify, testing, whether it's unit testing, end-to-end testing, or some other kind of testing, design patterns like MVC, MVVC, ABCDE. There's just so many damn design patterns. Flow control, debugging and breakpoints, UI, UX design, browser compatibility, what features are available in what browser, should I use these features yet, should I wait, preprocessors like Sass, Less, Stylus, package managers, NPM, Yarn, what's the Ruby one, Ruby Gems, Pip for Python, namespacing, the command line, which is a whole category itself, Linux, SSL, DevOps and deployment, which again is a whole nother category. There's job positions based on just that category, Apache, Nginx servers, SSH, FTP, SCP, different ways to log into servers and manage your server, virtualization, and mobile development and responsiveness. So these are just some of the things that we're expected to know, at least some of, and this is the reason why imposter syndrome exists, because there's no way for us to know all this, and we feel like we should. All right, so just a little rant. And there's a video that I'd like to recommend on YouTube, and it's I'll put the link in the description. It's by Jeffrey Way, he's a really good instructor. I actually learned jQuery from him, but he did a conference, I think it was Laracon, the Laravel conference, and he talked about all the different things that we need to learn in this industry and what we're expected, and it's just a really good talk. So I'm going to put that link in the description. I'd suggest you guys check that out. All right, so next thing we'll talk about is employment options. So once you go through school or boot camp and you feel that you're ready to get a job, or at least start working for money, or even an internship, then you first need to figure out what you want to do. So there's a few different options. We have freelancing. This is usually what I suggest for self-taught people that have, they don't have any, degree or anything like that, and they never actually coded for money. So it's a safe bet because it's not like you're being dependent on by a company that you're working for. Not to say that the quality of your work isn't important in freelancing, but you get a lot more freedom and slack. Now, the downside is you'll basically be working for peanuts at first. I actually started on something called Odesk, a website called Odesk, which is now known as Upwork. And I started doing like small WordPress projects for like $50 each. But after a while, I had a bunch of good reviews, so I started to get better jobs. And I remember I got my first $1,000 gig on Odesk, which is now Upwork. And I just thought that was so much money, and I was so proud that I was able to make that. From there, I progressed and I learned, and I started my own business, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. You also have the option of an internship, which I don't know too much about, but I would think this would be easier than finding a job, even with no experience, but of course you don't get paid for it. But in many cases, if you fit in and you do a good job, you'll get an offer for a paid position at some point. All right. Now, if you have any experience at all, whether it's freelancing or your own projects, stuff you did for your family and friends, or contributing to open source projects, stuff you can show people, then you can start looking for a job. And it will probably be an entry-level position, but you can learn and you can move up from there. And you may get a job with a big corporation, which will be good financially, or you may get a job with a small startup where you won't make as much money, but if you're, let's say, one of the first 10 employees for that company and it blows up, then you're in a really good position. And then, of course, you have the option to start your own company. This is something that I did. I learned WordPress, Drupal, and Joomla, which are all PHP content management systems, and that's what I use to build client websites. Now, I did this before I even knew any real programming language. If someone wanted custom functionality on their WordPress site, I'd stay up all night trying to either find a plugin or customize a plugin or even create a plugin myself, which was usually very clunky, but I had the drive to just, make it work. And I barely knew CSS. There was no Bootstrap at the time, so I did a lot of pre-made template stuff. The way that I did it, I really wouldn't suggest. I jumped in a little too soon, I think, but it actually did end up working out real well. And I got many clients that really liked my work, and they came back for more projects. Even if it wasn't the best work, they saw my drive and saw how much effort I put into their project, and I charged them cheap money as well, which helped. So you don't have to know everything to start your own company. Just be sure you specify what you can and can't do. If you can just do static HTML, CSS websites or WordPress sites, make that clear. Make it clear that that's what you specialize in, and then over time you can add more services as you learn more technology. All right, so when you start out programming, actually not just starting out, but throughout your career, you're going to get feedback and criticisms for your code. And me having a YouTube channel exposing my own code, I get this a lot, but 99% of it is helpful and positive, and I appreciate that. The only time I don't is when it's something that's so minuscule that it's really just the person wanting to feel like they corrected me, and it makes them feel like a better programmer or person or whatever. And you'll run into these people. You miss a space in your JSON key value pair and they try to make you feel like an idiot. Just ignore that small percentage of people. Most developers are understanding and helpful. Try to follow best practices. I know it can be hard because you get accustomed to doing things a certain way, and then you find out that it's really not the standard, and it's hard to change how you've been doing it. I would say when you're starting out, read the best practices for whatever language you're using and try to follow those as you learn. All right, you also want to stay up to date with software and tooling. So for instance, if you're a JavaScript developer, make sure you're learning ES6+, use let and const, arrow functions, promises, etc. It'll make you a better and more relevant developer. Okay, use tools like Webpack over something like Browserify, which has lost a lot of traction. And I know it's tough to take the time and figure out what's the most current tools and technology are. But if you work in the industry, you'll probably be told this stuff all the time by your coworkers and so on. If not, you'll need to kind of do your own research. Okay, we also have things like design patterns and paradigms. It's hard to figure out, for instance, should I use object-oriented programming over functional programming? Everyone's different in their reasoning. You just need to find what works best for you and best for the project. Okay, then we have DevOps and deployment, and this is a huge category. There's just so much to it. Things like Docker, Vagrant, cloud hosting, virtualization, very difficult stuff. It's not like the old WordPress days where you bought a GoDaddy account and you just FTP'd your site and that was it. If you want to build large-scale applications, custom applications. Deployment can actually be harder than building the app in some cases. Luckily, if you're on a team, there's usually someone that's really good with that stuff, and you can focus more on actually programming and building your apps. All right, so this last slide is very important, and it's about time management. So programming is different than most other jobs. The reason for that is that you really can't foresee the time it's going to take for something. You can spend like 2 or 3 days scouring the web and in sites like Stack Overflow trying to find a solution to fix a problem that you never expected to have. So this can cause turmoil with your family. I can't tell you how many times that I've said to my wife that I'm stressed out, I'm so behind, and she'll look at me like I'm crazy and say, you just worked 10 hours every day for the past week. Yet she doesn't understand that 3 of those days were just wasted on research for one issue that I couldn't figure out. She's a hairdresser, so people come in, they get their hair done, they leave, she gets paid, and that's it. And that's how most jobs are. So it's difficult to juggle, family life and work life as a programmer. It can also be hard to find time for hobbies and other things. I really love music, and I have a DJ kit that I like to use, but I rarely find the time to do that kind of stuff. I also like playing video games, but I kind of feel like that's wasting time. I could be doing something beneficial. So it's hard to keep up with hobbies and stuff you like to do, sports and stuff like that. All right, you also don't want to take on too much, especially if it's client work. You never want to give deadlines that you're not going to make. So make your deadlines 2 weeks later than you expect. It's much better to give a later date than to give them an earlier date to make it sound good and then not making that date, okay, and telling them they have to wait longer. So obviously everyone's schedule is different, so there's no one-size-fits-all answer, but just be very aware of your time and use some kind of planner, whether it's digital or whether it's just like a journal or a planner that you can write in. All right, so that's it, guys. Hopefully this wasn't too long. Hopefully I shed some light on a few things for new developers or even you guys that have been doing this for a while. I'll say it for like the 3rd or 4th time. Take everything that I say with a grain of salt. I'm just one person. Do your own research for everything that we've talked about. And if you are new or a transitioning developer or programmer, I wish you all the luck in the world. Thanks for watching. Please give this video a like if you liked it, and subscribe if you like this type of video. And that's it. Thanks, guys, and I will see you next time. Coding Dojo is a programming school that turns beginners into developers in only 14 weeks. If you're serious about landing a career in tech but lack the formal education or background, Coding Dojo will get you there in no time. With over 3,000 graduates to date, over 90% of their grads land jobs within 3 months of graduating, often making over $70K per year at tech firms of all sizes, from companies like Google to local startups. To learn more, visit codingdojo.com or click the link in the description below.